I just wanted now to focus on one of the sort of the key focus of the Leadership Foundation project. Just so we're absolutely clear, there was a UE project to develop the web-based system, which was a big internal project running over the course of a year, managed by Bill Ferrier, who we heard from earlier. Team of 5 or 6 developers and analysts and so on, roughly that, working at the core of it, but lots of other people from other parts of the university getting involved in that process. Big resource, a big number attached to it in terms of what we costed that at. But alongside that was the specific project funded under the Innovation and Transformation Fund by the Leadership Foundation and HEFKI, which was to encourage us and to enable us to think about how could we make our own experience and potentially even the model and the system transferable to the rest of the sector. I just wanted to talk you through what we've done on that and where we've got to. And I led on that project, but with others, Bill, Emmanuel, a number of other people in the room, Lee, just disappeared, Barry's in the middle, heavily involved in and Emmanuel, right, and others at the back, Lorraine, all involved in the Leadership Foundation project as well. Probably worth saying the relationship between the two. When we bid for and won the project, there were voices who thought this could be a bit of an issue. This could be a bit of a diversion from our core mission, which is to get this very complicated new workload system and the web-based system delivered. So the message to me, I think, as the leader initially, and then to the rest of the team was, yeah, great that you're doing this, but don't get in the way of the proper project. Don't get in the way of the real project. So that's been a negotiation, which, to be fair, colleagues on the main project and on the Leadership Foundation project, it almost did become a seamless part of the main project, and we're very grateful to all involved in that for making that happen. So it's about half my time I've used up now, but anyway, that was the preliminaries. So some key aspects of transferability, and then I'll say a wee bit about them. I was trying to get to 4 C's, but I got 3 C's and a T. Capability, so ensuring the potential transferability of the model and the system. So this was something about the design of the model and the system as we went along. Consultation and collaboration, something which the Leadership Foundation was very strong on, to consult with and collaborate with other HEIs through the course of this project, preferably across mission groups. All 3 of the speakers you heard from earlier have been centrally involved in the project. Cardiff were a little bit later into the process, but joined what we call it a steering group, but really it's a kind of friends group and discussion group that's been running. I'll say a bit more about that, each of the C's. Communication, obviously the documentation, the implementation, the reflection, and then finally transferability in practice, in practical terms, with a question mark against it, which I'll make clear later on. So, first C, capability. What we've developed is, as you've seen, it's a flexible web-based multi-user workload model system. Trips off the tongue. Some of the geeky stuff, I don't really know what these bits mean, I hasten to add, and others in the room know that I don't know, so I can't bluff my way. But it's built on proprietary software platforms. I think of that as Squirrel and .NET, but so things that other people would commonly be using, commonly used across the sector. Bill referred earlier to it being parameter-driven. There's a whole set of 40 or 50 parameters which you can change without having to lift the bonnet and rummage around with the wiring or pick up the phone or email people in IT services. So it's stuff which people within the faculties, the planning partners or clever associate deans like Noel in the front row here, who's been very heavily involved as part of the team. I should have mentioned you, Noel, when I did the roll call earlier. So things that we can change, and so quite a lot of the model can be reconfigured. It is very, very flexible. We didn't give Bill enough time to really show you the extent of that. But that makes it very flexible. So potentially it could be transferred, reconfigured using parameters without having to, as I say, fiddle around with the wiring and the coding and so on. So that reduces the need for expert IT service input, because they're really busy doing all sorts of other things that we need them to do. We can add in additional activities and roles, things that don't happen in UE, for example, but do happen elsewhere. Also, I mean, Noel's the expert on this, you can scale and weight components within the model to change the tariff values. There was one a good slide of Bill's which had a lot of things were set to 1, which just meant, yes, if it's this number of hours, it's that number of hours. But you can use those scalars and weights to fiddle around with things, or you can set them to 0 so they wipe out bits that you wouldn't want in your own institution. So some of the capability there. I hope you've seen it's reasonably user-friendly. Bill talked about the different levels of access. The currency is flexible, and in fact this is parameter-driven. It says bundles, but if you change that to hours, the whole model reconfigures itself into hours. I still like the idea of calling it local units named after the Vice-Chancellor's cat or something like that as the abstract currency unit. I may just live in hope on that one. I know people have been talking about whether it's hardwired into other information feeds and systems. I think Andrew covered that very well. He said yes, possibly, but as a second stage. If it was wired into, if we'd wired it into UE systems, I think it would have taken us at least another year. And secondly, if you then pulled the thing out and tried to put it in somewhere else, you'd have all these wires labelled UE this, UE that hanging off it, and you'd be thinking, how could we possibly fit it in somewhere else? The TRAC data generation we think is generic. I think that's been confirmed by the KPMG audit. For post-92 employment contracts, that is built in. I won't go into how that works, but that's built in, again, to the satisfaction of KPMG. But that bit can be suppressed for other types of university, with other types of contract. And it generates the sort of standard reports which most universities, I think, would like. You can go on and tailor stuff, but it generates some standard reports. Are there limitations? Well, there are bound to be some limitations, but it is generic. It's relatively high level. It hasn't gone into the micro definition. So, in the sense that it ought to map onto the sorts of activities which typically happen across all universities, and it potentially, where there are local wrinkles, those can be added in. It should work, therefore, across a range of institutions, a range of mission groups. Terry's input here has been very useful, taking a very different university from UE and thinking through, and Terry gave us a very good assessment of yes, but, a sort of assessment there. But it's not, we'd have to say it isn't fully tested. The generation of teaching requirements is something which is possibly closer to being specific to UE, but I think we've looked at other institutions, and other institutions have looked at it with us, and we think with the weighting and of components that can be adapted. So there clearly will be some limitations, particularly if you want to go beyond the provisions of parameters, weights, tariffs, capacity to add things. So if you want to go beyond a certain point and say, can it do this? Can I reconfigure it to do that? Can it be translated into Welsh? Yeah, we have been asked that. Yeah, well, yes, anything's possible, but probably that's a bit more fundamental. And some of that you'd have to lift up the lid and start mucking around with the wiring and getting clever IT people to do work on the on the code. So up to a point, it can be reconfigured. Language is not a parameter we built into it. Sorry, Terry. Interfacing, as I've said, even though it's standalone, there will be work to be done in a different environment because you will have different technical interfaces, and therefore the human interface, which we've talked about earlier, which Paul in particular talked about, the role of the planning partners, is absolutely crucial. You've got to have not just the clever IT system, you've got to have the clever people around it to make those interfaces work. But we welcome your thoughts when we come to the panel. Are there any showstoppers there? We don't think so, provided you don't want to push it too far, as long as you don't want to go beyond the provisions set out in the second bullet there. So on capability, this is a longer section, sorry. We know we've got a fully operational model within UE. There's one or two little things to finish off, but those will get finished. So it is potentially transferable. It's a working system, and it does generate TRAC reporting, and we are on the way to. It's very nice to have your own internal audit put up there with ticks and possiblies that Andrew did just now, but we're on our way to sorting the bits where he said it's in progress. That was being polite. But they are very polite, of course. And there's also, in terms of capability, we have provided, or by the end of the Leadership Foundation project, which is probably the 24th of December, we will have put a lot of documentation up there on the web about the model and about operating it, based on the UE experience, including issues that we've come up with around barriers, around key considerations, and so forth, which we're summarising and putting up on the web. Emmanuel's at the back saying yes. As soon as you get that done, Martin, we might have a hope of getting it, but that will be there. Okay, collaboration. Again, very importantly, rightly, a requirement of the Leadership Foundation project. There has been a lot of collaboration, which I mentioned already, with other universities, with KPMG. A number of you familiar faces. You've been to one, sometimes more than one of our workshops. We've had a lot of one-to-one meetings and discussions, conference presentations. I had the delight of going to the TRAC development group, BUFDG, I don't know what, meeting with Ian Duffy. Ian felt completely at home. I haven't been in a room with 200 accountants before, but it was a truly wonderful experience. I meant KPMG, I keep mentioning them. I'm not being paid by them, but I just put it down there too many times. I mean, and in particular, we've worked with a smaller group of potential early adopters to really explore in more detail, and we've had repeated discussions and webinars. We've got used to speaking with headphones on and so forth to people spread around the country on that. So that's the collaboration. I've got one more C left, one slide on this. And on communication, dissemination in various ways. It kind of overlaps with some of the collaboration I was talking about. But some of you, I think, have seen the videos which are already up on the web. There's an overview of the system and 4 how-tos which demonstrate WAMS. It's a bit like Bill, but not so interesting. It shows the things sliding around on the screen. We're starting to put some links through to the ITF Innovation and Efficiency Hub. As I said, we've been disseminating via conferences, networks, a range of different organisations, and this is the national conference, so there's a tick against that one. Which brings me finally to the issue of transferability in practice, and the kind of issues and opportunities around this. And I'd say straight away that we haven't got a complete ready-made answer yet as to what is our approach to transferability in practice. It's been part of the objective of the Leadership Foundation project was to explore how far we could get with this, and probably it wasn't that long ago we were saying actually working with another institution or institutions to actually achieve transferability would be the icing on the cake, I think is the phrase that was used. And we don't know yet exactly how we're going to do it, but I think things have moved on quite rapidly in the last couple of months, and we've narrowed it down quite rapidly, but I haven't got a sort of pat answer for you yet. What we've got, though, is a potentially generic transferable model and a system, but it's not plug and play. I haven't got one in my back pocket. We haven't got a stack of boxes of CDs that you can take away with you and plug it in like a Christmas game for our kids, and you can go away and play workload models over Christmas. We didn't. It's a thought, actually. Bill, can we work on that for next Christmas? It probably wouldn't catch on. It could be called Dark Force or something like that. We didn't set out, very, very clearly, we didn't set out to produce a kind of solution in a box or a commercial software product. We're not a software house ourselves, obviously, so we didn't do that. And the Leadership Foundation have been incredibly generous and very understanding, and we've had a great mentor. But the resources were finite. I think it was a £65,000 project, which does end at the end of December. So we've kind of gone almost as far as we think we can get on transferability within the Leadership Foundation model. One thing I was very pleased to hear Terry saying earlier, and I think it's probably true with some other institutions, that already we haven't just sort of communicated and collaborated and disseminated, but I think we have started to impact on the practice of some other institutions and what they're doing. And certainly the model and the tariffs and so on, they're all out there or will be out there, perfectly accessible for people to take and use. It's more around the actual technical, the web-based system where there are issues in terms of technical transferability. But I would emphasise again what I think all the speakers have said today, which is it's not just a technical system. It's getting all that human architecture, the role of the business partners, getting the multi-disciplinary teams wrapped around it. Because if you don't do that, it'll fail. So transferability isn't, that's one of the big lessons I think out of the whole project. That's one of our transferable lessons, that you've got to put all those things together. So I think the bottom bullet point there, what the point we've got to is that transferability. It's difficult to say that, and I've always wondered whether it should have two R's in the middle, but maybe not. Whether transferability for real implies, I think it implies a new project in effect, and we're really working very rapidly on that in collaboration with 2 or 3 partner organisations. But let me just run you through some of the options. So just before that, there are some UE modules still to be completed, which are in train probably even as we speak. So we've got the last bits of the UE model are a module to roll forward from this year to the next. We didn't need that straight away, so we've left that for a bit. The final stages of the TRAC output is all in there. It's in the model. It's being generated, but we haven't built the bit which will extract it and give it to you in BUFDG sort of this time next year, or slightly earlier than this time next year, to do the TRAC return. And there are still some more reports which we're working on. Bill mentioned, I think he showed us 2 or 3, the sort of pseudo spreadsheet and so on. There's some more standard reports being written. Other considerations, though, it's not clear as yet what in practice is required in resource terms, meaning our resources and any recipients' resource needs to secure the transfer. And we know that's not trivial, so we need to get resource from somewhere. And one of the other things we're very conscious of as a university are issues about longer-term expectations of us as the originator of the model, if you like. The extent to which others would be looking to us for support, continuing development, when our IT geeks are off doing all sorts of other clever things that are needed elsewhere in the university, and others of us are off doing other things. So there are issues about long-term expectations. So finally, just pretty quickly, a number of things that we considered. So we thought, not for very long, but we considered building capacity in-house to set up ongoing support and development, a hub or a network. We realised we would have benefited from ongoing collaboration, from testing experience. It wasn't very clear to us what the resource model for that would be. We're not very commercially minded, perhaps. But it's certainly not considered core business for a university like us. We're not a software house with all the expertise that requires, and we're not pursuing that. So that we did knock around with, but we closed that one down. Proof of concept was the idea of collaborating with one or more selected partners to trial transfer, to understand the issues, to look at the scale and complexity of the task, and to think about the resource applications. And we have gone some way down this path, a considerable way down this path, with 3, as it happens at the moment, 3 organisations in particular. What we've realised is that transfer, and we've learned a lot of lessons, and there's quite a lot sort of wrapped up in that first bullet point, which we have been doing, and I think collectively, the other institutions and ourselves, we've learned a lot from that process. One thing we've learned is that it's very dependent, obviously, on the capacity of the partner, both technical, but as Alistair pointed out, I've pinched your words here, I think, it's about technical, procedural, and cultural compatibility, and all that implies. So it's not just can the system as we've written it be plugged into their server, it's all the other stuff that's wrapped around that. The tricky issue of costs, sorry, keeps coming back to that, the issues of costs or resources come into that. It clearly would demonstrate transferability in practice, but again we come back to the need for clarity in terms of the transfer, the ongoing relationship, the future development, the challenges. And I guess we've had some concerns about whether we can provide ongoing support and development. So what we've been saying to these other institutions is, if we go down this route and if we do transfer it, you're kind of on your own after that. And that might not be the ideal situation, but we've been concerned to see an end point in terms of the requirements for us to be involved, while recognising we would obviously benefit from the ongoing relationships. So alternatives, we talked about making the system available through the cloud or through some other medium, at the risk of whoever picks it up and wants to run with it, without support or obligation from you. If I'm starting to sound a bit like legal and contracts here, it's because we've been talking to our legal and contracts people. You know what it's like. We think it would require further work on our part to get to that point. So to get even though we've emphasised how friendly and user friendly it is, how all these features are built in, there's still another step to go before it would actually be something that others could pick up and run with. It would require other universities, yourselves, if you're interested. What would really be required for you to be able to pick up and run with that? Particularly if there wasn't an ongoing specialist support unit that, with 24-hour help desk, you could ring up and say, "This, how do you do this? Where did that bit fit in?" And so forth. And also, that it might be a workable model. I'm sure it could be a workable model. But if sort of 4, 5, 6 universities all picked it up and were working independently, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, they would all have diverged and be working on different versions and have developed different models and so forth. And we're still not convinced that there wouldn't be phone calls coming back to you. He's saying, "You couldn't just help with this, could you?" And we say, "Ooh, that's going to be very difficult." Then somebody says, "If we paid you this, would you do it?" We say, "Ooh, that's very difficult." Still, because I won't labour that. I think the key thing is we wanted to avoid inflating expectations or falling short on people's expectations, while still managing to move towards transferability in practice. One thing we're doing at the moment is we're talking with a possible third party who would provide the capacity, expertise, and ongoing development for the sector as a whole. It's early days. It's too early to say more about that at the moment, but things are moving very fast. We need some discussions with the potential early adopters that we've been talking with, and we need some rapid discussion with the possible third party provider. So that is ending on a slightly enigmatic sounding note, I know, but we will keep you in touch with developments on that. And I think Emmanuel later is going to talk about, we're going to be seeking feedback from you, and obviously we can talk about this more in the panel, but if you've got thoughts on reflection about that and you want to come back to us with questions, do that. But we don't worry, we will be keeping you in touch with things as they develop, hopefully really quite rapidly. So I don't usually end on such an enigmatic note, but I'll stop there.